Tuesday. We cannot begin to imagine the scenes in the emergency department at Christchurch Hospital in the hours after the earthquake. So many injured, the dead and dying, people desperately trying to find their loved ones. But what we do know is that the doctors and nurses were extraordinary in those terrible hours. Patient after patient after patient has told us that. And so we asked some of the emergency department staff to talk us through their day. We spoke to 3 doctors, an anaesthetist and a nurse. If you wonder why the nurse is sitting in front of a caravan, it's because her home was one of the earthquake's victims too. One of the doctors we spoke to has also lost his home, but none of them were worried about that last Tuesday.
I remember looking at the clock and 10 to 1 and went to leave where I was standing to say I'm going on my lunch break, and it started moving.
It was obviously a big one. We could tell because it was completely different to anything we'd had before.
I left and evacuated the building, and soon many of the other hospital staff joined us.
We were out there for a few minutes and we saw that the emergency guys had moved outside and were setting up a triage area, so there's lots of doctors outside. We all came over to see what we could do, see if there's anything happening. Obviously there was.
And it was at that point we realised the carnage. We probably had 50 people waiting within 10 minutes, 50 injured people.
Very quickly we saw very gravely ill patients turning up by car and in the back of utes, straight to the emergency department. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before.
And the first patient was just this young girl brought in the arms of, I think, a stranger or a teacher, and she was obviously critically ill, and they just kept on pouring like that.
We immediately started trying to triage, which is a process where we decide the urgency of the patients. So we immediately started to triage the patients that were there, and it had got to the point that we were just actually overwhelmed. There were too many numbers. And I remember stepping back and thinking, okay, this is huge. This is going to be really big.
It was extremely busy. Triage 1's the highest category of illness for somebody, and we would get calls over the speaker saying, 4 Triage 1 patients coming, please find resus bays for them. And
all sorts of different types of injuries, obviously crush injuries, head injuries, lacerations, large lacerations.
So each bed in the department was manned by a team. So as soon as somebody came in, we could go to a bay and the team was there waiting for them. We had communication coming to us outside those ambulance doors continually telling us which bays were ready for us. At no time did we not have a bay ready for a person. So when the press building collapsed, we received 2 people, which we call status 1s, triage 1s, needing immediate attention, and we knew another 5 were coming. So those bays were made immediately available for the next 5 that were coming in. And it just worked. It just rolled, and the teams were there, and it was just organised chaos.
However, after a couple of hours of that, it became apparent that in fact what might be needed was somebody to go to a forward triage post. And so Stuart and I and another doctor who turned up, who used to be a registrar here, Chris Henry, we were given some high-vis jackets and taken out to Latimer Square where the forward triage post was set up. Shortly after that, Bryce Curran turned up, an anaesthetist from Christchurch Hospital, with a big plastic bags full of suitable anaesthetic gear and plenty of drugs. And he and Stuart Barrington Onslow then went off to the Pine Gould Guinness building to see what they could do there.
I was directed to the PGC building, where already there was a fantastic collaborative effort going on with the urologists from Australia, Stuart and Lydia and others. There were junior doctors that had gathered in town. So there's a real mucking in atmosphere. That was great because I was able to target the patients that needed some IVs, needed some pain relief and some anaesthesia.
And those patients would have been in the rubble, some of them, some out and some still in?
They were in various positions on the building. It was involved climbing up ladders and over rubble, and to get to the trapped man that subsequently required amputation, a bit of caving, for want of a better word.
So you actually went in, you took your drugs, you took your equipment, you went in?
I went into the building twice, John. The first time to place IVs, give some morphine, do some quick assessments, and then make a hasty retreat.
Was that terrifying being in there?
It's you're so focused, full of adrenaline, that very aware of the risk, but there's something in you just tells you that there's a job that needs to be done. So just got on with it.
We had a couple of young guys came running up to the triage area saying, there's a whole lot of people trapped in the rubble just around the corner, can you come and help? And so I checked with the incident controller for St John, and we got some personal protective gear, so some helmets, high-vis jackets, and bottle of oxygen and some stretchers, and we went round to the CTV building, and I rather naively thought that there would be some patients trapped under a little bit of rubble, and we'd just remove the rubble and get them out, put them on stretchers, and we'd clear those 15 patients very quickly. Well, as we all know now, that was a very naive thing to think, and in actual fact, the patients who were still alive were still trapped.
Later on that evening, it became apparent we're going to have to evacuate the top couple of floors for the medical patients because of some water damage. So I volunteered to go over to Princess Margaret, where we moved some of those patients to help look after them.
It didn't stop all day. And the fact it didn't stop was a good thing, because you knew that people were still coming in alive. If it had stopped, it would have been awful. But we knew that they were still rescuing people and they were coming in.
In the years to come, what do you think will be the one thing you remember most of all about that day at the hospital?
The carnage. I don't think I will. I don't think I'll ever get over the fastness that people came in. But the thing I will always remember is the teamwork, the amazing teamwork. And we had staff come back that haven't been working with us for a year or so, and they were there, and everybody just clicked back into their roles, and the support that everybody had for each other was just incredible. And it continues, you know, a week on, it continues, and it's been amazing, really, amazing.
I felt like a very small cog in a very big machine that was working exceptionally well both within the hospital and outside the hospital.
And are you very proud of that?
I'm very proud to be part of that machine.
That wonderful mucking in that we can do in New Zealand, you know, working alongside other tradesmen, police officers, fire service, everyone just doing their very best.
To save lives? To save lives,
yeah.
Is there a patient you remember? Is there one patient you remember? Or is it just a flashing vista of different faces?
It's hard to pick out any. It's probably not a dramatic story. It's not, you know, I didn't crawl into rubble, but there's one elderly patient with Parkinson's disease, so not able to move very easily. We had to move him up to one of the medical wards, and we got to the bottom of the lift, and there was no light in the corridors at that stage, and the lifts weren't working, and he was meant to go up to the ward on the 4th floor. And we said this to the guy, and it's 4 floors up, the lifts aren't working, what do you want to do? And he says, I'll walk. And it's this patient with Parkinson's who struggles to move, and his wife walked up the stairs with a couple of us helping by torchlight. So, you know, when you see someone like that, managing that, you think, well, it's not that bad after all, we can get on with it.
The staff of the emergency department at Christchurch Hospital. Of course, very, very many people worked that day. I should point out Ian, who you just heard from at the end, lost his home in Littleton, completely destroyed. A whole lot of other doctors couldn't get back to Sumner. They stayed, 23 of them stayed the night in a house with no water and went back and started working again first thing the next morning. And they all, without exception, wanted me to say that the fire department and the men and women who were working in the rubble for the fire department were true heroes also that night. After the break, adventurer Bear Grylls on survival.